Counter-terrorism, and we will indeed focus on counter-terrorism. Violent terrorists attacked the world's leading state sponsor of terror.
Trump says he's tough on terror, but in reality he's just obsessed with one kind of terrorism, and it's the one that he can most easily demonize. It's the one where the culprits are of a different ethnicity, religion, speak a different language, and have browner skin, but it's not the one that poses the greatest threat to the American people. Every extremist killing in the US in 2018 had a link to right-wing extremism, according to a new report from the Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism. Every one of the perpetrators had ties to at least one right-wing extremist movement, although one had recently switched to supporting Islamist extremism. White supremacists were responsible for the great majority of the killings, which is typically the case. But you wouldn't know from Trump's rhetoric, which actively ignores the greater threat to America in order to further his agenda.
In total, he said radical Islam 16 times in his speech.
We are going to keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country.
It's part and parcel of his overall thematic rhetoric, a rhetoric that is designed to elicit raw emotion from his base and help him politically, as opposed to bringing facts. It's pure misinformation, and it leads to actual terrorism like this.
Federal prosecutors have just charged a U.S. Coast Guard lieutenant for allegedly planning a terrorist attack targeting Democratic politicians and journalists here in the United States.
Prosecutors say that this man, Christopher Paul Hassan, was stockpiling weapons. They say they found at least 15 guns and 1,000 rounds of ammunition inside the basement apartment of his Silver Spring home. Silver Spring, Maryland, just a few miles outside of Washington, D.C. The defendant intends to murder innocent civilians on a scale rarely seen in this country, and that's why they're asking for the judge at a detention hearing tomorrow to hold this suspect.
This man is a self-described white nationalist whose hit list targeted, quote, leftists in general, including politicians like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, and Kamala Harris, as well as media figures like CNN's Don Lemon, Chris Cuomo, and Van Jones, and MSNBC's Chris Hayes and Joe Scarborough. In fact, the authorities said Lieutenant Hassan had studied the 1,500-page manifesto that the mass murderer Anders Behring Breivik, a far-right Norwegian extremist who killed 77 people in 2011, wrote in the hope of inspiring other killers. Following Mr. Breivik's advice about how to start a race war that would topple liberal governments, Lieutenant Hassan planned to assassinate prominent figures. He performed internet searches for the MSNBC host Joe Scarborough, among others, and for the phrase "civil war if Trump impeached," the authorities said. So, if you thought it was unfair of me to say that Trump's rhetoric leads to right-wing terrorism like this, try with all your might to overcome your own bias and just think. Trump has called the media the enemy of the people, and multiple right-wing terrorists with Trump obsessions have tried to murder media members. And right-wing terrorism in general has risen under Trump. This guy called himself a white nationalist, targeted Democrats and the media, and was actively wondering about a civil war if Trump is impeached. Yeah, this is as clear as day. Lieutenant Hassan wrote, "I am dreaming of a way to kill almost every last person on the earth." Can you imagine if a Muslim person wrote that? The right wing, Fox News, would be calling it a mass jihad and demanding a Muslim ban, or a black person, or an undocumented immigrant. For white terrorists, mass policy and mass demonization is non-existent. For non-white terrorists, their actions must be part of a larger trend, a larger philosophy. That's what happens when you have a president who exacerbates that narrative, who lumps minority groups together and dehumanizes them, and stokes violent rhetoric on top of it. If it doesn't fit his narrative, it doesn't exist. And it gives cover to the real terrorism problem that has been escalating in this country ever since he gained power.